The sky above New Eden shimmered in the pale light of Kepler 186's sun. For 50 years, humans had called this distant world home. 2 million colonists had transformed the once barren planet into a thriving paradise, with tall buildings of glass and steel rising from lush greenery. Farms stretched across the gentle hills, growing earth crops adapted to alien soil. Commander Jaiho Park stood at the main observation deck of Colony Control, sipping his morning coffee. At 53, he had spent most of his life on New Eden, arriving as a young lieutenant when the colony was just a collection of prefabricated modules. Now it was home. "Commander, we've got something unusual," called Ensign Minho from the scanner station. His voice held an edge that made Park set down his cup. Park moved quickly to the console. "Show me." The holographic display flickered to life, showing objects approaching from the system's outer reaches. 7 vessels, moving at incredible speed. "First contact," Park whispered. Humanity had theorized about alien life for centuries. Now the moment had arrived at their doorstep. He pressed the colony-wide alert button. "This is not a drill." Unidentified vessels approaching New Eden. All personnel to alert stations. Director Subin Kim rushed into the control room minutes later, her normally perfect uniform hastily assembled. "How many?" 7 ships. Unlike anything we've seen before. The vessels slowed as they entered orbit. Their design was strange, angular with sharp edges that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Pulsing violet energy coursed through visible channels along their hulls. "Open a channel," Director Kim ordered. Park nodded to Communications Officer Hyun Lee, who activated the transmitter. "Unidentified vessels. This is New Eden Colony. We welcome peaceful contact," Park transmitted, keeping his voice steady despite his racing heart. For 30 seconds, nothing but static filled the speakers. Then a voice responded in perfect standard, each word precisely pronounced yet eerily devoid of emotion. "This is High Commander Tai of the Xorian Empire. Your presence violates our territorial claim. Surrender for processing." The control room fell silent. Park exchanged glances with Director Kim. "High Commander Tai, we were unaware of any prior claim to this system," Kim replied. "Our records show no evidence of sentient habitation when we arrived 50 years ago. We wish to establish diplomatic relations and—" "Irrelevant," the cold voice interrupted. "Your colony occupies space claimed by divine right of the Xorian Empire. You have 1 hour to surrender or face extinction." The transmission cut off. "Get me Earth Command," Kim ordered. "The quantum communicator is powering up," Officer Lee replied. "But it will take 20 minutes to establish connection." "Start evacuation protocols," Kim said. "All non-essential personnel to emergency shelters. Deploy planetary shields." Park moved to the defense console. "Shields activating. But they're designed for meteor impacts and solar flares, not military assault." The next 40 minutes passed in frantic activity. Throughout the colony, people rushed to designated shelter areas. Parents grabbed children, hospital staff moved patients, and automated systems secured vital data. "We've got movement," called Ensign Minho suddenly. "The alien vessels are—" A blinding flash filled the observation windows. The entire control room shook. "They're firing on us," Park shouted. "Shield status." "Primary generators hit," reported the defense officer. "Shields at 32% and falling." Director Kim grabbed the communication system. "High Commander Tai, please cease fire. We haven't yet." Another blast rocked the building. "Shield collapse imminent," Park reported. "They're targeting our defense systems with precision strikes." They never intended to negotiate, Kim realized. "Get me Captain Bug at the spaceport." The secure line connected to show Captain Jun Seo Bak's face, smoke visible behind him. "Director, the spaceport is under direct attack," Beck reported. "Most evacuation ships have been destroyed on the ground." "What about the horizon?" Kim asked, referring to the colony's small military corvette. "Still secure in the underground bay, but we can only fit a dozen people at most. Kim's face hardened with the weight of an impossible decision. Captain, load all colony archives, biological samples, and first contact recordings. Select essential personnel and launch immediately. What about evacuation? There won't be one, Kim said quietly. They're systematically destroying our defenses. This is about making sure Earth knows what happened here. On the main screen, Officer Lee pulled up the colony-wide sensor grid. Red dots appeared across the map, impact sites where Xorian weapons had struck. They're targeting population centers now, Lee reported, her voice breaking as casualty estimates appeared. Thousands dead already. Park watched in horror as the numbers climbed. Why? We posed no threat to them. A massive explosion shook the building. Lights flickered and alarms wailed. Main power lost, reported the engineering officer. Backup generators engaging. Director Kim made her final transmission to Captain Bake. Launch now, Captain. Get to Earth at all costs. At the underground bay, Captain Bake and 11 others rushed to board the Horizon. They included the colony's chief scientist, a xenobiologist, a military strategist, and several skilled pilots and engineers. Lieutenant Ji-Young Kang, the colony's best pilot, took the controls. All systems ready. Bay doors opening. The small corvette lifted from its secure hangar as explosions rocked the colony around them. On the external cameras, they could see New Eden burning. Beautiful glass towers collapsed while fires spread through residential areas. The agricultural domes shattered, releasing 50 years of carefully cultivated atmosphere into the alien sky. Saurian vessels are targeting the large evacuation ships, reported Weapons Officer Da Hyun. Hundreds of people on each. They don't see us yet, Kang said. Engaging stealth systems. The Horizon accelerated upward, its experimental stealth technology, making it nearly invisible to sensors. All around them, larger ships filled with desperate colonists try to escape. One by one, violet beams lanced out from the Xorian vessels, cutting through them with terrifying precision. Preparing for slip space jump, Kang announced as they cleared the atmosphere. Coordinates for Earth locked in. Captain Bake took one last look at the planet through the viewscreen. Fires were now visible from orbit, spreading across the once beautiful landscape. 2 million people, their homes, their dreams, their future. Slip space entry in 3, 2, 1. Kang counted down as the stars around them stretched and distorted. The small ship vanished into the safety of slip space, carrying the only survivors and evidence of the massacre. Behind them, New Eden ceased to exist, its 2 million voices forever silenced, except for the 12 who would ensure Earth learned of this atrocity and would answer it. The Horizon limped through space, its systems failing after 3 grueling months of travel. Inside the small corvette, the survivors of New Eden fought to stay alive. They had started with 12. Now only 7 remained. Lieutenant Ji-Young Kang barely kept her eyes open as she guided the ship toward Earth. Sleep deprivation and malnutrition had taken their toll. Their food supplies, meant for a 2-week journey, had been stretched beyond imagination. Earth Defense Fleet on approach, she announced, her voice cracking from disuse. They're hailing us. Captain Jun Seo Budik, now gaunt and hollow-eyed, moved to the communication station. This is Captain Bake of New Eden Colony. We are the only survivors. The escort ships surrounded the battered corvette, guiding it to Earth's orbital station. Medical teams rushed aboard as soon as the airlock opened. The survivors were too weak to walk on their own. The data cores, Captain Bake insisted as medics lifted him onto a stretcher. They must be delivered to Earth Command immediately. Admiral Min Ho-song received the news in his office at Earth Defense Headquarters. His hands trembled slightly as he read the preliminary report. His daughter and her family had moved to New Eden 5 years ago. He had planned to visit them next month. 24 hours later, he sat in the Security Council chamber with the highest-ranking officials from Earth and all off-world colonies. President Seo Jun-han called the emergency session to order. "We face the gravest threat in human history," President Han said. "Before we discuss our response, you must see what happened." The lights dimmed. The footage recovered from the horizon played on the large screen. The council members watched in horrified silence. The recording showed the attack from multiple angles. Security cameras captured families running from their homes as energy beams cut through buildings. Colony defense forces tried helplessly to evacuate civilians. Medical centers overflowed with the injured before being targeted directly. Most disturbing was the methodical nature of the attack. The Exorian ships moved with cold precision, systematically destroying each section of the colony, leaving no possibility for survivors. When the footage ended, the room remained silent for several seconds. Admiral Song slammed his fist on the table. "This cannot stand." His voice carried the raw grief of a father who had just watched his family die. President Han nodded grimly. "For the first time in our history, all nations and colonies stand as one. We will build a fleet like none ever seen." The vote was unanimous. Earth would prepare for war. Within days, the mobilization began. The industrial might of humanity shifted entirely to war production. The Mars shipyards, previously building civilian vessels and science ships, expanded tenfold. Construction drones worked without pause, assembling warships at unprecedented rates. In the asteroid belt, mining operations tripled their output. Automated extractors tore through space rocks, harvesting metals and rare elements needed for the massive fleet. The fusion reactors on Mercury, built to harness the sun's energy, now powered the largest manufacturing effort in human history. Entire factory complexes sprang up across Earth's solar system. Admiral Song moved his headquarters to the orbital station above Mars to oversee the military buildup. Each morning he reviewed the growing fleet numbers, and each night he watched the New Eden footage, reminding himself of what they were fighting for. 6 months into the preparations, Dr. Jae-in Choi requested an audience with the Admiral. Her team had been analyzing the Exorian weapons technology from the limited data available. "Admiral, we've developed something revolutionary," she said, displaying a holographic schematic. "Phase shift shield technology. Initial tests show it can disperse energy weapons by shifting the shield harmonics out of phase with the incoming attack." Admiral Song studied the designs. "Will it work against their weapons?" "Based on the energy signatures recorded during the New Eden attack, it will render our ships nearly impervious to their energy weapons," Dr. Choi explained. "We can begin installation immediately." 2 weeks later, General Ta Wan-nam presented another breakthrough. In a secure testing facility on Jupiter's moon Europa, he demonstrated the graviton cannon. The massive weapon fired at a decommissioned freighter. Instead of destroying the target, the beam caused all systems to shut down instantly. "One shot can disable an enemy vessel," General Nam explained to the observing officials. "The gravitational pulse disrupts all power systems without destroying the ship. We can capture their vessels intact." The Admiral nodded in approval. "Mass-produce them. Every ship in the fleet will carry at least one." The news of these technological breakthroughs spread throughout the solar system, boosting morale and recruiting efforts. Young men and women volunteered by the millions to join the fight. On the first anniversary of the New Eden massacre, Admiral Song addressed the combined forces of humanity. His speech, broadcast to every settlement and vessel, was simple but powerful. 1 year ago, 2 million innocent lives were extinguished, not because they threatened anyone, not because they had done wrong, but simply because they existed where others wished to claim. Today, we promise those lost voices, you will be avenged. Humanity will not cower in fear. We will answer this atrocity with such force that no species will ever again think to harm us. In the months that followed, the fleet continued to grow. Ships of all sizes filled the space around Mars, Venus, and Earth, from small, agile fighters to massive dreadnoughts. Each vessel incorporated the new shield technology and weapon systems. 18 months after the fall of New Eden, Admiral Song stood on the bridge of the flagship Vengeance. Through the viewport, he could see just a fraction of the assembled armada, ships stretching as far as the eye could see. His second-in-command approached with the final report. Fleet status. 700,000 ships ready, sir. All crews at battle stations. The admiral touched the small holo pendant around his neck. It displayed an image of his daughter and her children, smiling in front of their home on New Eden. He had failed to protect them. He would not fail to avenge them. Signal all vessels, he ordered, his voice steady and determined. We depart for Xorian space. As the command transmitted, the massive fleet began to move. First hundreds, then thousands, then hundreds of thousands of engines ignited, creating a light show never before witnessed in Earth's history. The stars themselves seemed to dim in comparison to humanity's response. A fleet of vengeance sailing forth to deliver judgment. The vast human armada moved through slip space like a metal storm. 700,000 ships traveling together created a spectacle never before seen in the galaxy. At the front, 50,000 scout vessels formed the vanguard, searching for any sign of danger. Admiral Minho Song stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, watching the slip space tunnel swirl around them. The journey had already taken 2 weeks, and according to their calculations, they would soon reach their first target. Admiral, the scout team has sent their report, said Lieutenant Yun, passing him a datapad. Song studied the information carefully. The scouts had located a Xorian outpost near Ta City, a star system relatively close to human space. The outpost housed 20 warships and a space station that served as a forward base for Xorian expansion. It's perfect for our first engagement, Song said. Small enough to overwhelm quickly, but important enough to send a message. He called his senior officers to the command center. Holographic displays showed the Xorian outpost from multiple angles. We'll exit slip space here. Song indicated a point outside the system's detection range. Battle Group Alpha will deploy first. 50,000 ships should be sufficient. Commander Jia Ho-jin, his tactical officer, nodded in agreement, and the remaining fleet. They'll hold position in slip space, ready to deploy if needed. But I don't think they will be. The Admiral's prediction proved correct. When Battle Group Alpha emerged from slip space on the edge of the Ta City system, the Xorian outpost immediately detected them. But their response showed confusion rather than fear. They've raised shields and launched fighter craft, reported Commander Jin from his station. But their movements suggest they don't understand what they're seeing. They can't comprehend our numbers, Song said. To them, a fleet of a few hundred would be considered massive. The Vengeance moved forward with 10,000 ships, while the remaining 40,000 spread out to encircle the system. On the main screen, they could see the Xorian vessels forming a defensive pattern around their station. Battle group positions confirmed, reported Commander Jin. The Xorians have detected our approach, but seem confused by our numbers. Admiral Song watched the enemy ships with cold eyes. These were the same type of vessels that had destroyed New Eden. The same species that had killed his family and 2 million others without mercy. Open a channel, he ordered. Channel open, sir. Xorian outpost. Song spoke clearly. This is Admiral Song of the Earth Defense Fleet. You are surrounded and outnumbered. Surrender immediately. The response came quickly. Human vessels, this is Commander Ra of the glorious Xorian Empire. Your presence in our territory is an act of war. Withdraw or be destroyed. Song looked to his weapons officer. Target their engines and weapons only. I want their command ship disabled, not destroyed. Yes, Admiral. All ships, engage. The battle that followed was unlike anything the Xorians had ever experienced. The human ships moved with perfect coordination, their new phase shift shields absorbing the Xorian energy weapons without damage. When the human vessels returned fire, their graviton cannons disabled Xorian ships one by one, leaving them powerless in space. Smaller and faster human fighters overwhelmed the Xorian defenses, targeting key systems with surgical precision. From the bridge of the Vengeance, Admiral Song watched the battle unfold. Status report. 17 Saurian vessels disabled, replied Commander Jin. 3 destroyed. They initiated self-destruct protocols rather than be captured. Their command ship is surrounded and unable to maneuver. And our losses. 12 fighters damaged. No ships lost. Song nodded. Against the 20 Saurian warships, they had deployed just 10,000 of their vessels, a tiny fraction of the waiting armada. The message would be clear. Prepare boarding teams for the command ship. 3 hours later, High Officer Du of the Xorian Empire was brought to the Vengeance for interrogation. The Xorian appeared reptilian, with scaled purple skin and vertical pupils and yellow eyes. He stood a full head taller than the human guards, but moved with difficulty in Earth-standard gravity. Colonel Sun Hyun, Chief Intelligence Officer, entered the secure room where the alien was being held. Behind her, Admiral Song watched through a one-way window. "I am Colonel Yoon," she began. "You are now a prisoner of the human fleet." The Xorian's translator converted his hissing speech into standard. "I am High Officer Du of the Eternal Empire. I demand to be treated according to Imperial protocols." "Your empire destroyed a human colony without provocation," Yoon replied coldly. 2 million civilians dead. We've come for justice. The colony occupied space claimed by the Emperor, Du replied, as if this explained everything. All who defy the Empire's divine right must be removed. How many worlds have you removed this way? The Xorian's head tilted in what might have been confusion. 17 sentient species have been processed in the last cycle. It is the natural order. Colonel Yoon displayed holographic images of New Eden before and after the attack. Does this look like a natural order to you? Your numbers are insignificant, Du replied, though his eyes kept darting to the tactical displays showing the human fleet. The Emperor will deploy the Grand Fleet when he learns of this incursion. You cannot stand against our technology. Our technology seemed quite effective today, Yoon noted. Your ships offered little resistance. These were merely border guards. The Imperial warships are 1,000 times more powerful. Admiral Song entered the room. And where would we find these warships? The Xorian stared at Song with defiance. The Emperor's fleet protects the sacred homeworld and our core systems. They will crush your primitive vessels. And this homeworld is where? Du remained silent, but his eyes briefly flicked toward one of the star maps visible on the wall display. After the interrogation, Admiral Song gathered his command staff to review what they had learned. Engineers had already decoded the Xorian databases from the captured vessels. Their empire is larger than we thought, Song said, expanding a holographic map of Xorian-controlled space. 57 star systems under direct control, and another 100 they claim as territory. That's too much space to cover with even our fleet, commented General Park. But look at the distribution, Song replied. Their forces are spread thin. Most systems have only token defense forces like the one we just defeated. He zoomed in on a particular star system near the center of Xorian space, and their homeworld, Xor Prime, is here. The gathered officers studied the location. According to the data, they've conquered several species and forced them into servitude, reported Colonel Yoon. Some of these subject races might support us if given the chance. Admiral Song considered this information. His original plan had been to systematically destroy each Xorian outpost, but now he saw a better strategy. We'll divide the fleet into 3 battle groups, he decided, marking points on the map. Battle Group Alpha will attack their major shipyards. Battle Group Beta will move through these systems with subjugated species and offer liberation. And Battle Group Gamma. He drew a direct line to the Xorian homeworld. Gamma will punch straight through to Xor Prime. Commander Jin looked concerned. Splitting our forces seems risky. The Xorians think in terms of technology, not numbers, Song replied. They can't imagine a force as large as ours. By the time they realize what's happening, we'll be at their doorstep. The Admiral looked once more at the map, his eyes cold with determination. We've shown them we can defeat their ships. Now we'll show them we can defeat their empire. The imperial palace on Exor Prime glittered with crystalline spires that stretched toward the violet sky. Inside the strategic command chamber, 6 Saurian leaders gathered around a holographic display showing their vast empire. Red warning lights flashed at the edges of their territory. Grand Admiral Ryu stood tall among his peers, his purple scales shimmering with decorative gold inlays that marked his high rank. His vertical pupils narrowed as he studied the reports coming in from the border outposts. "The humans have attacked 3 of our frontier stations," reported Sub-Commander Ta. "All contact lost." "Exaggerations," dismissed Grand Admiral Ryu with a wave of his clawed hand. "Humans are primitive. Their colony fell in ours. These reports are likely from commanders seeking to explain their own failures." Minister Lo, head of Imperial Intelligence, clicked her teeth nervously. "The reports match across multiple sectors. Something unusual is happening." "Perhaps pirates using stolen human technology," suggested Ryu. "Send a destroyer squadron to investigate." 3 days later, the chamber was in chaos. The holographic map now showed 15 red alerts, all deeper within Xorian space. "The shipyards at Ta City have gone silent," announced Minister Lo. "All 5 defense stations destroyed." Before Grand Admiral Ryu could respond, another alert sounded. "The vassal world Nyx has declared rebellion," called out Communications Officer Pack. "They claim human forces have liberated them from our rule." "Impossible," Ryu hissed, his scales flushing darker purple with rage. The door to the chamber slid open. Emperor Jun entered, flanked by his royal guards. All Xorians immediately lowered their heads in submission. The Emperor's scales were deep indigo, almost black, with platinum inlays covering most of his body. "I was told our empire is under attack," the Emperor said, his voice transmitted through the royal translator. "Explain." Grand Admiral Ryu hesitated. "Your Divine Majesty, we are experiencing disturbances." "Disturbances?" The Emperor's eyes narrowed to slits. "I hear reports of destroyed outposts, rebellions, lost shipyards. We believe humans may be responsible," Ryu admitted, "but our reports are confused and—" Another alert sounded, louder than before. The holographic display zoomed to show the Mach system, just 3 jumps from the Imperial core worlds. "The primary defense station at Mox has been destroyed," announced Officer Pack. They transmitted visual data before loss of signal. The display shifted to show grainy footage. Hundreds of human ships swarmed around a Xorian defense station, their weapons cutting through the once impenetrable shields. The station exploded in a burst of light. Emperor Jun stared at the display in disbelief. "How are they penetrating our territory with such force?" "These are the same humans whose colony we destroyed without effort." Minister Su, the most junior official present, stepped forward hesitantly. His scales were pale with fear. "Your Majesty, our long-range sensor arrays have compiled data from multiple sectors." "Speak," ordered the Emperor. "The humans have built a fleet of unprecedented size," explained Minister Su, trembling visibly. "Our long-range scans indicate over 500,000 vessels." Silence fell over the chamber. 500,000 ships was beyond comprehension. "Impossible," the Emperor roared, striking the holographic display with his clawed hand. The image flickered but remained. No species could build such a force. Grand Admiral Ryu recovered first. "Even if these numbers are accurate, their primitive technology cannot stand against our superior designs. 1 Imperial warship can destroy 50 human vessels." "Then deploy the Imperial Armada," Emperor Jun commanded. "Their numbers mean nothing against our superior technology." Grand Admiral Ryu bowed deeply. "It shall be done, Divine One." Within hours, the pride of the Xorian Empire assembled above the royal shipyards. 12 capital ships, each the size of a small moon, powered up their engines. Around them gathered support vessels and fighter squadrons, the most technologically advanced fleet in known space. From the command bridge of the flagship Eternal Glory, Grand Admiral Ryu addressed his fleet commanders. "We face primitive humans who rely on numbers rather than quality. Our task is to crush their main force and end this rebellion swiftly." Intelligence reports indicated the largest human battle group was attacking the Thanos shipyards, the Xorians' primary military production facility outside their home system. The Imperial Armada set course to intercept. Meanwhile, aboard the human carrier Dauntless, Captain Hyunwoo Moon watched as Battle Group Alpha approached the Thanos shipyards. 200,000 human vessels moved in perfect formation. "Saurian defenses on screen," reported his tactical officer. The display showed the massive shipyard complex, a sprawling structure larger than Earth's moon. Surrounding it were defense platforms and patrol vessels. "Standard approach?" asked his second-in-command. Captain Moon shook his head. "Admiral Song wants this facility captured intact if possible. We'll use the new targeting protocols. Disable, don't destroy." As Battle Group Alpha moved within range, space itself seemed to warp. 12 enormous vessels appeared from slip space, the Korean Imperial Armada. "New contacts," called out the sensor officer. "Largest vessels we've ever encountered." Captain Moon studied the readings. Each Xorian capital ship was nearly 20 kilometers long, dwarfing even the largest human dreadnoughts. Energy readings showed weapon systems far more powerful than those they had faced before. "All vessels, defensive formation Delta," Moon ordered calmly. "Prepare graviton cannons." The human fleet spread out into thousands of smaller groups, making it impossible for the Xorians to target them effectively. The Imperial Armada fired its first salvo, massive energy beams that could shatter planets. Several human ships vanished instantly, but the vast majority activated their phase shift shields. "Shields holding at 87%, reported the defense officer. "The phase shift technology is working." "Return fire," ordered Captain Moon. Thousands of graviton cannons fired simultaneously. The specialized weapons didn't attempt to destroy the massive Xorian vessels. Instead, they targeted specific systems, disrupting power flow and weapons controls. On the Eternal Glory, Grand Admiral Ryu watched in growing horror as his mighty warships began losing systems one by one. "How is this possible? Their weapons should not penetrate our shields." "Their technology has advanced significantly," reported his science officer. "And their targeting is precise. They're disabling rather than destroying." "Launch all fighters. Target their command vessels." The Xorian fighters swarmed out, nearly 1,000,000 strong, but they found themselves outnumbered 30-1 as human fighter squadrons engaged them. The battle raged for 3 days. The void lit up with weapon fire and exploding ships. Despite their technological edge, the Korean capital ships found themselves surrounded and systematically disabled by the seemingly endless human fleet. On the third day, Captain Moon received a priority transmission from Admiral Song. "Status report," demanded the Admiral. 10 Xorian capital ships disabled, Moon reported. 2 destroyed. They initiated self-destruct rather than be captured. "The shipyards are under our control. Casualties at 12% of expected." "And the defense grid disabled completely," Moon confirmed. "The path to Xor Prime is open." Admiral Song's expression remained grim. "Begin preparations for the final phase. All battle groups will converge on the Xorian homeworld in 3 days." As the transmission ended, Captain Moon looked out at the captured shipyards and disabled Xorian vessels. The mighty Imperial Armada, pride of an empire that had devastated countless worlds, now floated powerless in space. "Send word to battle groups Beta and Gamma," he ordered. "Operation Vengeance enters its final stage." The planet Xor Prime sparkled like a jewel in space. Its 3 moons reflected purple light onto the surface below. Beautiful cities covered the main continent, with towers reaching toward the stars. Around the planet, thousands of defensive platforms formed a protective shell. The Xorian homeworld had never faced a real threat before. Emperor June stood in his floating palace, which hung suspended 10 kilometers above the capital city. Through the crystal windows, he could see his remaining warships, the last of the once mighty Imperial fleet, forming a defensive ring around the palace. "The humans have breached our outer systems," reported Minister Su. "All three of their battle groups are converging on Exor Prime." "How long until they arrive?" the Emperor asked. "Hours, Your Majesty." Emperor Jun turned to Grand Admiral Ryu, whose once proud posture was now bent with defeat. "You assured me they could not defeat our technology." "Their numbers are beyond anything we imagined," Ryu replied. "And their weapons, they've somehow developed countermeasures to all our systems." The Emperor hissed in anger. "Prepare the planetary shield. Evacuate essential personnel to the bunkers. We will rebuild after this storm passes." But the storm that approached was unlike anything the Xorians had ever seen. In slip space, the human fleet reunited. 700,000 ships prepared to emerge together. Battle Group Alpha from the galactic north, Beta from the east, and Gamma from below the ecliptic plane. They would hit the Xorian homeworld from 3 directions simultaneously. Admiral Minho Song stood on the bridge of the Vengeance, studying the final battle plans. On his uniform, he wore a small pin with the symbol of New Eden. "All battle groups report ready, Admiral," said Commander Jin. "Casualties to this point. Approximately 48,000 ships lost, sir, within acceptable parameters." Song nodded grimly. They had destroyed or captured over 900 Xorian vessels, while losing just under 7% of their own fleet. The numbers were impressive, but each lost ship represented hundreds of human lives. "Commence final approach," Song ordered. "Emerge from slip space on my mark." The largest coordinated slip space exit in human history occurred precisely on schedule. The Xorian early warning systems barely had time to sound alarms before the sky filled with human vessels. In the Imperial Palace, Emperor Jun watched in horror as the tactical displays showed the human fleet's true size for the first time. Ships filled every section of space around his world. "Activate all defenses," he commanded. The planetary shield engaged, forming a golden bubble around Xor Prime. The defensive platforms opened fire, their energy weapons lancing out at the approaching human ships. The remaining Xorian warships moved to engage. From the Vengeance, Admiral Song watched the initial exchange. The Xorian defenses were more formidable than anything they had faced before. Human ships vanished by the dozens as concentrated fire overwhelmed even their advanced shields. But for every human ship lost, 100 more took its place. Admiral Song opened a channel that broadcast across all frequencies, in both human standard and the Xorian language. His voice echoed through every ship, every station, and across the surface of Exor Prime itself. "This is Admiral Song of the Earth Defense Fleet. This is humanity's response to genocide. You destroyed our colony without provocation or mercy. Now face our judgment." In their first coordinated attack, 50,000 human ships fired graviton cannons at the planetary shield generators. The shield flickered but held. "Their shield is too strong for direct assault," reported Commander Jin. Admiral Song nodded. "Implement Phase 2. Small, fast ships darted forward, sacrificing themselves to create gaps in the Xorian defensive fire. Behind them came specialized vessels carrying marine teams. While the main battle raged in space, these ships slipped through to land on the planet's surface. Major Haijin Sim led the largest marine unit. Her target, the shield generator complexes spread across Exor Prime's northern continent. "Team 1 in position," she reported as her unit secured the first facility. "Setting charges now." Similar reports came in from around the planet. Within 2 hours, the shield generators began to fail one by one. The battle for Xor Prime raged for 14 hours. Human ships fell by the thousands, but the Xorian defenses collapsed under the sheer weight of numbers. The Imperial Palace, once protected by its own shield and elite guard ships, found itself surrounded by human vessels. Emperor Jun stood in his throne room as the palace shook from nearby explosions. The shield was failing. His guards prepared for a last stand. "If I am to die, I will do so as emperor," he declared, donning his ceremonial armor. The palace shield failed completely, but the expected bombardment never came. Instead, precision teams of human marines breached the structure at key points. They moved efficiently through the ornate corridors, disabling rather than killing the Xorian defenders when possible. Major Sim led the team that reached the throne room. They found Emperor Jun waiting, surrounded by his royal guard. "Emperor Jun," Sim announced through her translator, "by order of Admiral Song and the Earth Defense Fleet, you are to be taken into custody." The Emperor hissed in defiance, "I will not surrender to lesser beings." "Your choice is to come with us alive or dead," Major Sim replied simply, "but you will come with us." After a tense standoff, the Emperor surrendered. The royal guards lowered their weapons. Major Sim's team escorted the Emperor to a shuttle that would take him to the Vengeance. Admiral Song waited on the observation deck. Large windows showed the planet below, now under human control. The floating palace, still intact, had been secured as a command center. Emperor Jun was brought before him. The Xorian ruler still carried himself with pride, despite his defeat. "I expected you to destroy our world," Emperor Jun said, "to take revenge for your colony." Admiral Song studied the alien ruler carefully. "First, there is something you need to see." He nodded to his communications officer. "Activate the displays." The large screens around the observation deck came to life. They showed recordings from New Eden, the systematic destruction of human settlements, the deaths of civilians, children running from incinerating beams, cities crumbling under orbital bombardment. "Watch," Admiral Song ordered as the displays showed scene after scene of horror. "This is what you ordered. This is why we came." Emperor Jun watched without visible emotion. "It was our right to claim that world." "It was genocide," Song replied. "And now your empire has fallen because of it." The admiral turned to his communications officer. "Transmit to all ships and worlds. The Xorian Empire has fallen. All subjugated species are now free." The message went out across the galaxy. On dozens of worlds, enslaved species celebrated their liberation. The Xorian military commanders who had not been captured surrendered one by one as news of their emperor's defeat spread. In the weeks that followed, humanity did not destroy Xor Prime as many had expected. Instead, they established a new order, the Interstellar Coalition, an alliance of species with Earth at its center. The coalition promised protection and freedom to all peaceful worlds. A memorial was built where New Eden once stood. The names of every lost colonist were inscribed on walls of black stone. It became the headquarters for the newly formed coalition peacekeeping force. 6 months after the fall of Xor Prime, Emperor Jun, now stripped of power and title, was brought to this memorial. He had been kept alive to witness his empire's transformation. As he walked among the names of the dead, escorted by Admiral Song, the former emperor finally asked the question that had puzzled him since his capture. "Why didn't you destroy us completely? We would not have shown such mercy." Admiral Song looked at the monument, where his daughter's name was etched alongside 2 million others. "Because," the admiral replied, "we wanted to be better than you. But make no mistake, should anyone ever harm humanity again, 700,000 ships will seem like a small response." The former emperor nodded slowly, understanding for the first time the true nature of the species he had so fatally underestimated. Not just their industrial might or their technological ingenuity, but something far more powerful, their capacity for both vengeance and mercy. The stars looked different now. Throughout the galaxy, word spread of how humans had avenged their dead, how they had assembled the largest fleet ever seen, how they had overthrown an empire that had stood for 10,000 years, and how, in their moment of absolute victory, they had chosen justice over annihilation. The message was clear to all who heard it. The galaxy had a new protector. And should anyone ever again mistake human kindness for weakness, the response would be swift, overwhelming, and absolute.